What's up, everyone? Beast Mode back here with another video. So it's been a little while since I posted a video. I was at Nationals a few weekends ago. I think it's about 2 weeks now. I have not touched or logged on to like Yu-Gi-Oh activities at all. It's been a nice little break. I wanted to make a video because there is going to be RBET Maryland this weekend. I will not be in attendance. I had to choose between Nationals and or Maryland, and I wanted to go to Nationals. It was awesome. Almost 500 players. So I believe this RBET is going to be over 200 players at least. So it's going to be very competitive. I wanted to make like a top 8 prediction. Usually I do this before all the big events. After Nationals, it seems to be that people are going to be on this new frog deck. I'm not even sure the name of it. I have a list that was similar to it. I don't have the exact list, but most players have seen the list by now. It's been posted all over YouTube. So some of the decks that we obviously know are going to top or likely will top, Value Turbo, probably a strong bet to win the event. We don't need to talk much about that. We have Blackwing. Maybe we'll win, but you should see at least one in the top cut. Let's get into the more spicy builds here and lists. I do think the Machina deck has a strong shot at topping because I'm aware of a player that is like a local player at that area, and I believe they play like Machina Fortress deck with like Fiendish Chain in the main, and they're a really strong player. So sometimes the deck you may not feel is that great, but if the player is good with the deck and a top player, they can carry some of these more tier 1.5 2 decks to top tables and top cuts. So this deck is strong anyway. There wasn't really any showing at Nationals. I thought there'd be more. I think a lot of people just like let me throw Cyber Dragon back in the sideboard just like I did at Nationals. So that could be hurting the deck a little bit. So it might be a time for this deck to kind of cool off, and then people stop side decking Cyber Dragons again, and then it rotates back in. But I just mainly picked this because I do know of a player that is pretty strong in the local scene there. From just watching streams, I don't know the player's name, but I know they play this deck. So I think that there's a shot that this could make the top cut. It's a strong enough deck, and it has a lot of tools, and this card's broken. So. Next here, Amarillis. This deck is super strong. My brother actually played this at Nationals. Mainly a Modern player. Played some Edison side event because Modern's just really bad from what they say, and went 7-2 at Nationals with this list. Not this exact list, but with this deck, I think he was on 3 Amarillis. But this deck it's really not Amarillis burn. It's more Titanial deck. This card's super strong. You banish it with Bottomless, so they bring it back with the DDR. They play I know some of the builds are playing more than just one Hidden Armory. You put it in the graveyard. They got Miracle Fertilizer. Like, the deck is super strong. It's decent. I don't know. Some frog players say it's not good versus them, but I feel the deck is super strong. The first 4 rounds of Nationals, my brother played against frogs. 4 rounds in a row. And I think he went 3-1. I think he lost one just game 3. But Titanium's super hard for that deck to deal with. Like, Monarchs are just not that great versus it. And if they are able to set up a Titanium with any type of plants on the board, like, the only out they really have is Absolute Zero. Obviously, they can crash into it, but then like Mark of the Rose becomes really busted at that point where you can just take someone's Absolute Zero and kill them with it, which is what he was doing all day. 2 of them top Nationals. I think this deck is like definitely here to stay, and probably the strongest of the 1.5 decks. This is not a tier list video, but definitely strong deck. So I would not be surprised if at least one of these top. What else do we got here? This is this new frog deck. It's a variant of it. I'm not sure what the exact lineup was or list. There was not one posted online that I could just easily download, but something similar to this. These frog decks are getting more and more. I feel like they're becoming more and more unfair in the sense that they're playing a different game than everybody else is in Edison. Like, this deck already sits behind a Duplock, which no other deck can do. This deck can sit behind Duplock with a flip-flop frog. I was talking to the player who actually won the event, and they told me that some of the old school players remember that they actually were able to Yada lock somebody during the tournament run, which is insane because they had Urbellum on the board. And they like flip-flopped the board back to their hand, so they were at 4 cards, and they were like Titanial or whatever it was. They were just like tribute monsters, and then they would hit them with the Urbellum, and they can't draw a new card. So their hand is literally whatever their hand was is what they could play with, and every turn they just kept flipping the flip-flop frog and then attacking directly. So like, you literally can just do unfair things with these decks, and I think at this point, like, if there's going to be the tier 1 broken deck of the format, it's probably going to involve frogs. I just kind of concluded that at this point because they just do things that other cards can't do. And like, Fishborg has been barely like, labbed at this point. There's going to be so many more broken things. I just feel like this deck is literally has so much more to brew up. And I think we're only scratching the surface. We have a Death Frog in the deck now. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that is new. And this deck does completely unfair things. It generates +1s without doing anything. Like, you don't even have to play versus your opponent. You can just summon a Swap Frog, bounce something back to your hand. You can summon, send Treeborn. It's just, if there's going to be the broken deck of the format, I feel it's going to be revolving around some frogs. This card's busted too. When you set this up, like, they can't even play. So this deck here is going to be in attendance without a doubt. This deck does lose more to DD Crow than the Hero Frog version just because of the Pot of Avarice. And again, this is not the deck that won Nationals, not the exact list, but it's very similar. This card here comes in and out of, the deck just because I think it's probably not as strong now with the draw traps. But I feel like the draw trap craze is probably coming to an end soon because everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows they're there. You play Jar Greed over Legacy. No, you're not tricking anybody anymore. That was kind of like up until Nationals type of deal. I think at this point that everybody knows the cat's out of the bag. So I do think DD Crow needs to be in the sideboard because you need to be able to hit the Fishborg. You need to be able to hit Pot of Avarice. I don't know if this is better than Hero Frog. I have not played the deck. I don't play frogs, but and I actually haven't really been watching much YouTube content. I'm sure some of the frog experts have discussed their opinions on it, but I just have literally not been touching any Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's been great. So of course I'm going to play. I just want to take a break, but next list. So I suspect frogs. Definitely this deck. I think, and I know this is a crazy take, and I know people are going to be like, that's not possible. I think right now, fairies are extremely strong right now. Maybe not extremely, but I think they're strong. And the reason why is because I suspect that there's going to be a lot of frogs, and this card here does not allow that deck to play. Now, you can say, well, they can just Monarch it and bounce it back with a Raizo or banish it. This card says no to that. So I think that maybe not this exact version, maybe not the old slow build, but maybe more like this. Christia Sworn, I suspected would be strong at Nationals. It didn't really have that showing that I thought, but I think it's even stronger now with frogs becoming even more popular because I think more people are going to be playing some version of Hero Frogs. Supposedly, and I don't play a lot of fairies, but I am thinking about starting to pick up the deck a little bit. Because it does play a similar style aside. It doesn't have the explosiveness of zombies, but it plays the recruiter game, and it can play that slow, grindy game as well, kind of right up my alley. But supposedly this deck has a strong Blackwing matchup. So if it's strong against Blackwing, and it can be very strong versus frogs, this card also can out the Titanial deck. They can't special summon anything. Like, I just can't imagine why this deck is not good enough to win, or not at least not good enough to top. Like, I feel like it should be able to top the event. Now, again, ratios probably have. I think this deck needs to be worked on. I'm not convinced that this is the only build, and it's been like this for like this fairy build here, like the recruiter style. I feel like it hasn't really changed much. I think there's something here, but I do think the Christia build is probably better. The Christia Sworn build. I think we're going to see some of. I think it's possible we see one of these top, and I do think that this deck's going to get more popular because this card is just so strong. But that's my hot take for the weekend. There are a couple other decks I want to talk about really quick that I think could make a splash, but I'm starting to lose hope on. That would be the Hero Zombie build rather. I think that for a long time, and I still think that this is probably the best zombie build, but I used to think that this was the best way to play Diva Hero, and I'm not convinced about that anymore. Like, this deck just falls on its face in most tournaments toward, you might start off 4, 5, 6-0, but it doesn't get the job done. It's no better in terms of tournament finishing really than any other zombie deck. Like, a Hero Zombie build has not won an event that I can recall, whereas the old school Diva Zombie builds, and now this is a few years ago, have. I think the idea was this has a better mid game, but again, you're playing the recruiters and stuff. It has all of the same problems that this deck does, minus the Miracle Fusions, where this deck just is still more explosive. So I feel like if you're going to play this build and your goal is to have an explosive zombie build but have a mid game, I almost say screw that, let's just play the deck that can win turn one a lot more often. Yeah, it doesn't have a mid game, but the mid game of this deck is not all that great either. I see hands sometimes of this deck and it just falls apart. You just draw dead. It's the same thing with this. So, but the reason why these decks are good is because they're so powerful, right? They play a bunch of one-ofs. They're so explosive. And if you get hot, you can just win an event turn 2 every game. Both of these decks are extremely explosive. So, again, I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith in them. I was waiting for one of these zombie decks to win. They don't even top that often. There's best Yu-Gi-Oh player NA seems to like, he makes deep runs in tournaments. He makes top 8, but sometimes loses in top 16. It's hard to say. And myself, even with regular zombies, myself included, like, I have deep runs and might make a top 8, but the deck doesn't win either. So I don't know if the answer is playing Diva Hero or Diva Zombie Hero. I'm not sure one is better than the other. I used to be very I used to take a very strong stance that this deck was just better than Diva Hero, but I see this deck fall apart similar, but I see that it has a little less explosiveness. So I almost feel like maybe you just say, let's just go, pedal to the metal and just go all out and play this. I don't know. But these two, I wouldn't be surprised if one of them topped. I feel at this point it's more likely that you see a Diva Hero than you see a Diva Zombie Hero. I just feel like this deck is a little bit more popular. And again, this deck hasn't won a tournament, but I feel like if it gets hot enough, it definitely could. There's no doubt about it. It's just so explosive. So those are a little bit of my opinions. I still love zombies. I still think this is probably the best zombie version. I am still in favor of Ultimate offering zombies, but mainly nobody plays it besides me and a few other people. And there will be someone in attendance that I know will be on the deck. So I hope they do well. But really, the decks I'm excited to see top will be fairies. I think that this deck has a strong shot right at this time. And I know people think I'm crazy, but if you check some of my tier list videos, I call dragons like 6 months ago. I said I feel like that deck has a shot at being strong this year, and it's topped multiple tournaments, different builds. I'm not trying to take all the credit. I'm just saying I was right about a couple things. So I think fairies have a shot at being decent right now. So I wanted to make a quick video, give my thoughts about top 8 in Maryland. Good luck to all that are going. We'll be cheering from at home. I'll probably catch a stream a little bit. And with that being said, I'll see you all on the next one.